Gentlemen, the modern dating landscape is a psychological battleground. Women test, they play games, sometimes consciously, often subconsciously, to screen for strength, leadership, and emotional intelligence. But the high-value man doesn't flinch, he doesn't react, he outsmarts. They don't play the game, they control the frame. A high-value man understands that most of the so-called games women play are simply tests. These tests aren't always malicious. Often, they are unconscious behaviors designed to assess a man's confidence, his emotional stability, and most importantly, whether he can lead in a dynamic between masculine and feminine energy. The average man reacts to these tests. He becomes defensive, confused, or needy, but a high-value man doesn't even enter the battlefield in the way others do. He doesn't chase, beg, or try to prove himself. Instead, he sets the tone from the very beginning when a woman tries to provoke him, perhaps by flirting with other men in his presence, delaying her responses, or trying to make him jealous. He doesn't bite. Not because he doesn't care, but because he understands the true power lies in frame. Frame is the unshakable belief system and reality a man carries into every interaction. If his frame is weak, he'll constantly adapt to hers. But if his frame is strong, she will feel it, and either align with it or fall away. The high-value man is not reactive, he is intentional. He leads the conversation, sets the emotional tone, and defines what kind of relationship dynamic he is willing to engage in. For example, if she's being distant or playing hard to get, he doesn't escalate his pursuit. He pauses, he observes, he lets her come back to him. Because his identity is not built on being liked. His identity is built on being respected. He doesn't compete with other men for her attention because he doesn't see her as a prize to be won. He sees himself as the prize, the one who chooses. This doesn't mean he's arrogant. It means he has standards. He doesn't allow low-effort behavior just because he finds a woman attractive. He doesn't tolerate inconsistency just because he's emotionally invested. Instead, he sets clear expectations without even needing to say them outright. Because his presence, his energy, and his boundaries speak louder than words ever could. Women sense this on a deep, almost primal level. When they interact with a man who is grounded, who knows who he is and refuses to be pulled into emotional tug-of-war, it creates both respect and attraction. The game loses its power. The emotional manipulation becomes ineffective. The control she thought she had begins to dissolve, and suddenly she realizes she's not in control of the situation. He is. This is how you men outsmart the games. They don't react to them, they don't fight them, and they don't even acknowledge them directly. They simply live in a world where those games don't work. Because their frame is stronger, their sense of self is unshakable, and their energy communicates one undeniable truth, I lead. You follow. They spot tests instantly and pass without effort. A high-value man has trained himself to recognize emotional patterns and behavioral cues. He understands that in the world of relationships and dating, not every action or word a woman says is straightforward. Women often communicate indirectly, through subtleties, emotional shifts, and what might appear to be erratic behavior. But underneath those moments is often a test, an unconscious way of asking, can this man handle me? Can he remain centered when I'm emotional, uncertain, or even slightly chaotic? These tests come in many forms. She may cancel plans last minute just to see how he reacts. She may bring up another guy she's been talking to or mention her ex out of nowhere. Sometimes she'll get distant without explanation or give backhanded compliments that feel like subtle digs. The average man either reacts with frustration, overcompensates with more attention, or tries to get into a deep emotional discussion to solve what he thinks is a problem. But the hive, you man, doesn't do any of that. He doesn't react emotionally, he responds with poise. He doesn't take things personally because he knows these tests are not really about him. They are about how he manages his own energy in the presence of the feminine. When she pushes, he doesn't push back. He lets her energy fall flat against his stillness. When she withdraws to get a reaction, he doesn't chase. He lets her experience his absence and decide if she wants to reconnect. He views these moments not as games to be beaten, but as opportunities to demonstrate his emotional sovereignty. Because here's the truth, women don't test weak men. They test men they're intrigued by, men they're evaluating for long-term potential. These tests are like subconscious checkpoints. Can he stay calm under pressure? Can he make decisions without being rattled? Will he collapse into emotion or maintain his strength when she's unsure of herself? These are the deeper questions behind her behavior, and the high-value man knows how to answer them without saying a word. His calm demeanor in the face of confusion is what separates him from the rest. If she tries to get under his skin, she fails, not because he's cold, but because he's grounded. He sees what's happening, and instead of reacting, he becomes more composed. If she accuses him unfairly or tries to stir insecurity, he simply smiles or responds with a short, emotionally neutral answer. His lack of defensiveness shows her something powerful. He's not easily moved. This presence is rare, and it's precisely why women are drawn to it. Most men try to fix her emotions. The high-value man simply holds space for them without being consumed. He lets her test, he lets her question, but he never lets her pull him off center. That kind of emotional resilience doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to be explained. It's felt, it's respected, and most of all, it's remembered. They use detachment as a weapon. High-value men understand one of the deepest truths in relationships. Emotional detachment is not indifference, it's control. It's the power to remain rooted in your values, your purpose, and your peace, regardless of how someone else behaves. Most men become overly invested far too quickly. They meet a woman who excites them, gives them attention, and suddenly their emotional world begins to revolve around her. They lose sleep, overthink every message, and let her moods dictate their own. That's not love, that's dependence. A high-value man does the opposite. He connects, but never clings. He feels, but doesn't fall into emotional chaos. He understands that attachment is a vulnerability when it's not balanced by self-respect and self-control. And because of that, he uses detachment not as a defense mechanism, but as a strategy. When a woman starts playing games, pulling back, testing, or being inconsistent, he doesn't respond by chasing or demanding clarity. He responds with distance. Detachment is powerful because it creates space, and in that space, two things happen. First, the man regains his mental clarity. He's not trying to decode every little action she takes. He's not investing his energy into someone who's not matching him. He steps back and reflects. Is she really aligned with what he wants? Is she contributing value to his life, or just taking his time and attention without reciprocation? And second, that space forces the woman to feel his absence. It confronts her with a question she can't ignore. Why did he pull away? Most women are used to being pursued. They're used to emotional reactions. But when a man doesn't react, when he calmly withdraws instead of fighting to keep her close, it shakes her frame. She realizes she's dealing with someone different, someone who values himself more than he values temporary affection. She starts to question her own behavior, not because he lectured her, but because he did something far more effective. He removed his energy. That's where detachment becomes a weapon. It's silent yet loud. It doesn't beg, it doesn't explain. It simply exits the dynamic until the woman either steps up or fades out, and the high, Val, you man is okay with either outcome because he never fears loss. His emotional world isn't anchored to one woman, it's anchored to his purpose, his principles, and his peace. If she returns with respect, consistency, and value, he may re-engage. If not, he moves on without bitterness. This kind of detachment isn't about playing hard to get or using reverse psychology. It's about operating from a place of strength. It's about knowing that true power lies in not needing anyone to complete you. It's about holding your ground and allowing people to reveal their true intentions without interference. The high, Val, you man doesn't manipulate. He simply controls his presence. And that presence, once withdrawn, becomes more valuable than any words he could ever say. They never explain themselves to earn approval. High, Val, you men understand the difference between clarity and justification. They speak with intention, but they do not feel the need to explain their every move, decision, or boundary in order to gain a woman's acceptance. Most men fall into the trap of over-explaining because they are afraid of being misunderstood, judged, or rejected. They believe that if they just say the right thing or provide enough context, they can win her validation. But in reality, the more you explain yourself to someone who's already decided to question or challenge your stance, the weaker you appear. Hi, Val, you man doesn't seek approval, he seeks alignment. He isn't afraid of being misunderstood because his self-worth doesn't hinge on how others perceive him. When he makes a decision, whether it's to take space, cancel a plan, pursue his goals, or end a relationship, he stands by it without needing to justify it to someone who might not understand his reasons. He knows that explanations are often demanded not out of genuine curiosity, but as a way to manipulate, control, or test boundaries. When a woman confronts him with passive-aggressive behavior like "Why didn't you text me back right away?" or "You seem distant lately, are you even interested?" he doesn't scramble to defend himself or give a long-winded explanation to make her feel better. Instead, he speaks simply and directly, or sometimes not at all, because he knows that engaging in emotional negotiations is a slippery slope. Once you begin explaining yourself to ease someone else's insecurity, you teach them that your time, energy, and decisions are up for debate. This doesn't mean you men are cold or dismissive, they are clear. If a woman is genuinely confused or seeking understanding in a respectful way, he'll communicate calmly and assertively. But what he won't do is beg to be seen as reasonable, good, or worthy. He doesn't present his case like a lawyer in a courtroom hoping for a favorable verdict. He knows who he is. He's at peace with his intentions, and he refuses to let someone else's emotional turbulence dictate his sense of self. This attitude creates a different kind of energy, an energy of leadership. He sets the tone without demanding agreement, and ironically, this is what draws women in even more. When a man stops trying to win approval and simply lives by his truth, it commands attention and respect. Women may challenge him, but they can't help but be intrigued. Why? Because they sense that this man cannot be guilt, tripped, pressured, or emotionally swayed by tactics that work on lesser men. In a world where many men bend over backward to explain themselves in hopes of being liked, the high-value man stands out. He speaks less but with more weight. His words are chosen carefully, not to please, but to express truth. And if that truth makes someone uncomfortable or causes them to pull away, he lets them go. Because for him, living in integrity is far more important than being approved by someone who doesn't truly see his value. They flip the script through silence. A high-value man knows that silence is one of the most powerful responses in the realm of relationships. While most people are addicted to constant communication, rapid replies, and emotional expression, the high-value man operates differently. He understands that silence is not a lack of communication. It is a form of communication in itself. It speaks volumes without saying a single word. It sends a message that is far more impactful than long paragraphs or emotionally charged conversations. When a woman tries to test him with passive-aggressive comments, emotional distance, or subtle provocations, the average man reacts. He argues, he defends himself, he tries to explain, and in doing so, he validates the game. But the high-value man doesn't participate in emotional ping-pong. Instead, he allows silence to do the work. He doesn't respond out of impulse, and he doesn't feel the need to chase clarity. His stillness becomes his shield, and his silence becomes his sword. Silence has the power to make a woman reflect. When a man doesn't react to drama, she starts to question her own behavior. She wonders if she went too far, if she misjudged his character, or if she lost the attention of a man who cannot be easily swayed. This is the brilliance of silence. It shifts the power dynamic without confrontation. It creates space for self-awareness, not just for the man, but for the woman too. A woman expects emotional reactions. She expects a man to prove himself, to fight for her attention, to validate her insecurities. But when a man responds with composed silence, it throws off her script. Suddenly, the typical cycle of attention, seeking and reassurance is broken. She is left with herself, with her actions, and with the awareness that she might lose a man who refuses to be manipulated. This doesn't mean the high-value man is emotionally unavailable. It means he chooses his battles wisely. He understands that not every comment requires a response, not every test requires engagement, and not every moment of tension needs to be solved immediately. His silence is not avoidance, it is discernment. It shows that he is selective with his energy and that he values peace over pointless emotional exchanges. Even in conflict, silence is a tool. When a woman raises her voice, tries to provoke a reaction, or plays the victim, the high-value man holds his ground through stillness. He may listen, he may acknowledge, but he does not match her chaos. His energy remains calm, composed, and undisturbed, and that calmness becomes contagious. Over time, it forces her to meet him at his level or be left behind in her emotional storm. Silence also builds mystique. A man who speaks only when necessary commands more attention when he finally does speak. His words carry more weight because they are not diluted by constant overtalking or emotional oversharing. He becomes a man of presence, not noise, and in a world full of men trying to talk their way into a woman's heart, the one who knows when to be silent often stands out the most. By flipping the script through silence, the high-value man avoids unnecessary conflict, maintains control over his emotional state, and commands deep respect. He teaches through his energy, not his words. And in doing so, he makes it clear his peace is not up for negotiation. They reward consistency, not chaos. A high-value man operates with intention, not impulse. He's not impressed by short-term attraction, erratic emotions, or hot-hand, cold behavior. Instead, he pays close attention to patterns. He understands that anyone can act right for a day, show affection for a week, or offer attention when it's convenient. But true value reveals itself in consistency. He watches how a woman shows up over time, how she communicates when things aren't going her way, how she responds to his boundaries, and whether she brings peace or chaos into his life. Many women test men with inconsistent behavior, not necessarily out of malice, but out of emotional instability or a desire to maintain control. One day they're affectionate, the next they're distant. One moment they express interest, the next they create drama to see how a man reacts. The average man becomes addicted to this emotional roller coaster. He mistakes unpredictability for passion. He thinks the emotional highs are a sign of deep love and that the lows are just part of the package. But a high-value man knows better. He doesn't equate chaos with chemistry. When a woman is inconsistent, he doesn't try to decode her. He doesn't sit around wondering what she really feels or what he did wrong. Instead, he takes the behavior at face value. If she's hot and cold, if she creates unnecessary drama, or if she shows a lack of emotional maturity, he doesn't reward it with more effort. He withdraws. He observes. He lets her actions determine the level of access she gets to his life. Because he's not desperate for attention. He's selective with his energy. On the other hand, when a woman is consistent, calm, and emotionally present, he notices. He doesn't take it for granted. He understands how rare that kind of emotional steadiness is in a world that glamorizes chaos. He rewards it with his time, presence, and effort, but not because he's trying to win her over, because he sees value in her stability. He recognizes that building anything meaningful requires predictability, mutual respect, and shared emotional maturity. You men do not allow emotional turbulence to set the tone of their relationships. They are not here to be therapists for women who refuse to regulate their emotions. They are not here to fix broken patterns. They are here to build something solid, and that only happens with someone who knows how to show up consistently, even on the days when it's inconvenient. That kind of woman is rare, and when a high-value man finds her, he treats her differently, not out of fear of losing her, but out of recognition of her worth. He also knows that his own consistency sets the standard. He doesn't just expect calm, he embodies it. He doesn't demand loyalty, he leads with integrity, and because of that, he can easily spot someone who's aligned versus someone who's just seeking emotional entertainment. This clarity allows him to move through relationships with strength and discernment. He doesn't argue over red flags, he acknowledges them and walks away. By rewarding consistency and ignoring chaos, the high-value man filters out the emotionally unstable and attracts partners who match his level. He doesn't waste time trying to tame someone's emotional storms. He simply chooses peace, and through that choice, he sends a clear message to every woman he encounters. If you want access to my world, bring stability, not drama. Bring effort, not excuses. Bring consistency or be replaced. In the end, you men don't play by the rules of emotional games. They rewrite them. They don't chase approval, they command respect. They don't get pulled into chaos, they walk in calm authority. While others waste time reacting, explaining, and chasing, the high-value man remains grounded, focused, and in control. Women may test him, challenge him, or try to shake his frame, but he never folds. Why? Because he knows who he is. And that unshakable identity is the very reason he always stays one step ahead. Unbothered, unmatched, and unforgettable,